This season turn it up to 10. Sorta like a bad habit, we gon' do it again. Ready or not, we're gonna tie up some men. Go tell the 36, try to grab all the friends. We're back like we never left. On track like a treble clef. Skip a beat on the 7th rest. Bring feast, we don't pass them over. We got the first fruits, no way to show us. This yoke is easy, this burns light. Even with a loud mouth trying to eat at the mic. Even if we down south, the humidity spike. Veils torn in two, so we gon' be alright. Don't stop, they're in need of it though. Through grace by faith, they could easily grow. New wave, new age, new way to see bro. Now one truth, life, one way to his throne. Can't live on that bread alone. Every word of God's mouth will fuel me on. That's scripture, that's Christ alone. That's grace alone, that's faith alone. All glory to God, cause that's his alone. Since the lamb's been slain, we can each belong. The Lord is my strength, my peace and my song. And I'll lay it all down at the feet of his throne. So relax, God is still in control. He knows every care, every fear that you hold. He knows every hair, every need for your soul. Nothing new around here, this story's been told. I'm just saying there's a time in the season you gotta be a Berean. If you just hear and believe it, you could be walking with demons. It could be rendering season. All the things that go to God, that's a little like treason. Wait, welcome back my friends. Did you ever really think we could pass the 10? Our socks up, we about to trend. Cause the whole 36 wanna rap again. Wait, sounds too good to be true. Like rabbinic candy land, ain't no ladders, just shoot. We hold true if it's loaded in the cannon. Best believe it's understanding, if it's not it ain't proof. Like sacred name of the 2-house frame. You get something tickle, then you fill it in the blanks. It's hide and seek, let's see if you can find out all the little messages you hit before the timeout. Ever seen a scholar with a blue belt? I have, he's about to make your food melt. The loud one and he strikes again, but don't let him close range, he gon' bite your friends. So relax, God is still in control. He knows every care, every fear that you hold. He knows every hair, every need for your soul. Nothing new around here, this story's been told. I bet you feel weak and your life is in tatters. With Bruce Street, your body is battered. You can't reach, trying to climb up that ladder. Sit back and hold fast till Messiah matters.
What is up? Welcome to Messiah Matters. This is episode number 544, believe it or not. I had a secret show the other day. If you're new to the show, let me introduce myself. My name is Caleb Hegg. I'm the director of Torah Resource, a Messianic Jewish company. Started in 2002, but plot twist, we hold the one law theology. What is one law theology, you might ask? I'm glad that you are asking that exact question. Actually, we got an email from my good friend and our art director, the one who does all the art for Messiah Matters, Michael. What did Michael say? Where is it? Hang on just a second. I'll find it. Am I not finding it? Did I delete it? I didn't delete it, did I? One law. All right, let me look for it. Hang on. Okay, now normally I just tell you what one law is. That's what I do every show, right? But this one was actually really good. I want to find it because Michael gave us a great definition here. Here it is. Okay, I found it. Okay, here it is. This is what Michael says. Michael says, you're hitting it out of the park on Rudolph's article. I have not heard one law explained like this. Okay, now here's his bullet points. Bullet point 1. One law means that the Torah is for the native born, the Jew, and the non-native born Gentile in the same way that the Torah is for male and female. There are different laws for men as there are for women. There are unique laws for the male Levites that the men of the other tribes could not keep. That's true. There are laws only for the sons of Aaron that the other Levites could not keep. Also true. Some laws excluded the widow, the orphan, the Levite, and the stranger. One law does not mean that the Gentiles can pick and choose whatever laws they want to do. One law does not mean that Gentiles can be Levites or priests or do the things that are not prescribed for Gentiles. Also true. This is all, he's knocking it out of the park here. Yeshua is not a Levite and therefore could not be a Levitical priest. He was not a son of Aaron. He would not break the Torah to fulfill each commandment. What he means by this is that Yeshua is not going to go into the earthly temple and try to perform the duties of a priest because he was not himself a priest. That would be inappropriate, right? Yeshua did not keep every commandment perfectly like some teach. And what he means by this is true actually, right? I mean, Yeshua did not go into the temple and perform the ritual of slaughtering the Passover lamb. Why? Because he was not a priest, and therefore Yeshua didn't have to fulfill that role perfectly. However, the Torah itself is a reflection of God, and therefore encompasses the nature of God. Okay, are we all on the same page here? I hope so. He was not a woman, an orphan, a Levite, etc. He was obedient to the commandments that were relevant to himself as a first century male Judahite. I completely agree. So it's good to get a definition of one law so that we know exactly where we're at. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. In the chat room, and by the way, maybe I don't call out the chat room enough. It's great to have people in the chat room. I'm happy you guys are here. You always make the show so much more interesting and lively. We have someone that says woof or woo, woo, exclamation point, woo. First time catching the live video. Congratulations. Welcome. Okay, I've already shown our executive producers at the bottom of the screen. I want to thank our executive producers for being executive producers. You really do help this show continue on. Okay, what are we doing today? Well, first I'm going to give you, we've had a little chit chat. We've defined what is one law, and now we're going to look at a couple of things that are coming up, two things that are coming up. Let me tell you about them. First, my 1 Corinthians Bible study begins again tomorrow, Thursday. If you're watching this later, it's okay. It's probably coming up this Thursday as well. 1 Corinthians, we're currently, at the time of this recording, we are still in chapter 1, and you can come. We're changing the time from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So tomorrow, Thursday, if you want to come join the Bible study, it's real easy. Just go to the trlearningcenter.com, trlearningcenter.com. If you don't have an account, make yourself an account. Go and find the free classes, the free courses. 1 Corinthians Bible study is in there. It's totally free. You can sign up, and then you can join it live. Okay. And what else? Colorado Springs. I'm going to Colorado Springs. I'm going to be speaking at a congregation called Beit Adonai Israel, which is in Colorado Springs. All their information is online. You can find, if you look for Beit Adonai Israel, you can find their information. I will be there February 20th, which is a Friday. I will be speaking twice on Friday, once I think at 3:30 and once at 7:30. There will be an Erev Shabbat meal in between my lectures. And then I will be teaching the Torah portion on that Shabbat. So if you're in the Colorado Springs area or the surrounding areas and you want to come say hi, I would appreciate that. It would be great to see you. And I'm going to be talking on Paul's view of Gentiles, particularly in 1 Corinthians. Okay. What is your opinion on multiple destination theology? I have no clue. I don't know what that is. I think you might be talking about what I've been labeling recently as location-specific theology or location-specific. I'm still hashing that out, but yeah, I believe in it, if that's what you're talking about, but I don't know. Good morning and shalom. Good morning and shalom to you. Okay. So those are the announcements. I'll keep announcing the Colorado Springs thing coming up. That's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. If you'd like to be a part of this conversation, you can do so. CHageTorahResource.com. That is my email address. You can also call the comment line, 253-465-3205. You won't talk to me. You'll talk to an answering machine. Tell me how much you love me, hate me, disagree with me, agree with me, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can find new merch. All of our new merch and executive producer credits can be found on MessiahMatters.com. You can also donate to this show at TorahResource.com. Donate to Torah Resource. That's who produces this show. You can find all sorts of free resources along with paid resources as well. And last but not least, do not forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Why am I saying all this so fast? I'll tell you why, because we got a lot to cover today. way. And if you don't know what's been going on in the past couple of shows, let me catch you up here, folks. What's going on is I have been walking through a article by David Rudolph, Dr. David Rudolph. Now, Rudolph, I have to say this every time because I really believe it, and I don't want people to get the wrong impression here. Dr. David Rudolph is just a sweetheart. I love him to death. I think he's great. He's always been super kind to me. He's been interacting with me via email, or I guess we haven't touched base in a couple weeks, but we had a back and forth on this very subject recently. I actually bought his book because of it. I want to read what he has to say in his book. He's always very nice to me when we meet in person. I have nothing bad to say about Dr. Rudolph as a person. I disagree with his theology. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And in fact, I told Dr. Rudolph this when we were chatting. I think that I agree more with Dr. Rudolph on so many things than I disagree with him on, first of all. Second of all, I think I actually agree with Dr. Rudolph more than I would the average Christian in terms of theology. And that's because even though Dr. Rudolph rejects the idea that Gentiles should keep the Torah, as I believe, he does believe that Jews should be keeping the Torah. So he's one step closer, I think, than the mainstream Christian church is when it comes to Torah observance. And for that, I applaud him. Okay, so this is not a dig on Dr. Rudolph. It might seem like it because we spent a lot of time on this. And actually, now I've been kind of lining up some other articles that we can do this with. I got one by Mark Kinzer. Some people have sent me some websites they want me to respond to as well. And I can tell you this, we know for a fact that we have had some new listeners start jumping on and listening, including some members or some leaders of the mainstream Messianic movement. That's totally fine and cool. Welcome to the show. I'm happy you're here. I did a secret show. What I mean by secret show is that it's not planned. I just decide like in an instant, hey, I'm going to do a show today. And so I do. I just jump on and do this show. And so I did that on Monday. And I did that because another leader in the Messianic Jewish community reached out to me via text and said, hey, I got a question for you. Can you explain why you would think that Gentiles need to be circumcised according to the New Testament? I attempted, probably failed, but I attempted to do that in the show on Monday. It was a half an hour long. So we've talked so much about circumcision. I didn't want to do it during the main show because I felt like the average 36 listeners that I have would probably turn the radio off, right? Turn the radio off. Is it 1950? See you here? All right. Let's jump in. Where were we? We were in last show, the last main show. So 542. I'm going to kick over here. We were right here. This, I believe, is where we were. Let's take a look. Let me take a look. Yep. This is where we were. I just want to make sure that I'm one law arguments. Okay. And then I'll bring this up for you just a little bit. There we go. Okay. This is page 11. If you want to find this, I'll try to remember to put it in a link in the description of this video. You can also find it just by putting in David Rudolph, One New Man. Now, I've already gone through my understanding of One New Man. And actually, by the way, if you can, come tomorrow to the online 1 Corinthians Bible study. I don't know if I'm going to get to it or not. Yesterday, I basically wrote a whole exposition on Galatians 5:11. In my commentary, and we're going to go over it at some point. I don't know if we're going to we won't get to it tomorrow. It'll probably be 3 weeks out. But anyway, I digress. Okay. One law arguments and responses. This is what Dr. Rudolph says. In my interviews with prospective students, he is the dean of the King's University, the King's University, King's College, I don't know. One of those. Anyway, sorry. My bad. I should know these things. In my interviews with prospective students who hold to one law views, I have heard 6 arguments repeated over and over that seem to represent the primary motivations for why people adopt a one law perspective. Pause. Okay. I'm sure that this is Dr. Rudolph's own perspective and his own experience. That's fine. However, I can tell you my experience, and my experience is the reason people can't become one law. This happened to my family when I was very young. Around 5 years old, this started to happen to my family. What happened was we were in the mainstream Christian church. Okay. And my mom asks my dad. Now, there were a lot of things, a lot of, pieces in motion here. But my mom eventually asks my dad, hey, why don't we keep the Sabbath? Easy enough question, right? But it's like the taster. It's like the taster. You get a taste of it, then you have to get more of it. And my father's answer was, it's complicated, but she was not going to settle with that. So my dad started to study. By the time I was 6 years old, my dad has said, I don't have a really good answer. Now, if you're in the mainstream Christian church and you're probably saying, yeah, I got a good answer for you, right? Let's see here. Colossians 2, right? Or, pick one of the verses that people are going to go to say that the Sabbath is done away with, or that the New Testament does away with the Sabbath. My father's a scholar, and so he's looking at this from a linguistic and whatnot perspective. He comes back and he says, I'm not sure that we shouldn't be keeping the Sabbath. Maybe we should be keeping the Sabbath. This is the gateway drug to Torah observance. This is the gateway drug to one law theology. Because as soon as you start to pull on that thread, where are you going to go? What's going to happen? If you're going to keep the Sabbath, then what about the Sabbath that is not on the seventh day? What about the Sabbaths that are like the other Sabbaths? Because there are other Sabbaths, right? What about Yom Kippur? That's a Sabbath. Are you going to keep that Sabbath? So then you start looking at the festivals. Then you start looking at the dietary laws, at the kosher laws. And all of a sudden you realize, hey, you know what? The Bible actually promotes the Torah in every situation. Maybe we should be keeping this. If we're covenant members, and then, eventually you get to the place where I'm at, right? Maybe not. Maybe nobody wants to get to the place where I'm at. Eventually you get to a place like me where you say, guess what? Not only do I think the Torah is good, I think it's my birthright. I think it's, now granted, we could debate, and this is exactly what we're doing. We're debating whether or not Gentile, like if you're Jewish, what does that mean if you're Gentile? One law would say it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not. It doesn't matter if you're a Jew or Gentile, right? And so, to me, do I have Jewish heritage? Yeah, we have Jewish heritage. Does that matter to me? No, I think that God has made one new man. And that one new man, the Torah, is for everyone. It's the birthright of anyone who is say it with me, folks, heir according to promise. If you are an heir according to promise, if you're an heir of Abraham, then you get the birthright. What's the birthright? The Torah. The Torah is the birthright. Okay. And as you begin to see, and as you begin to understand the Torah for what it is, a reflection of Hashem himself, a reflection of Yeshua himself, as you start to see that, you want more of it. That's how I see it. So I don't think it's just a theological perspective. Back to Eliyahu Orez says, sorry, I guess I don't know how to label it, but the idea that depending on whether or not you follow the Torah but believe in Yeshua, the Messiah, gives you a different position, like leveling system. You're going to have to email me on this one. I'm sorry. You're going to have to describe it more, because I don't actually know what theology you're talking about. So I'll give it to everybody. If you have theological things that you want me to look at or comment on, go ahead and send me an email. chegg, TorahResource.com, CHEGG, TorahResource.com. Okay, let's go back to Dr. Rudolph. So once again, I'm not downplaying his experience, but my experience is that one law perspective comes usually from someone understanding something like the Torah or the kosher laws are not done away with. Let's keep going with Dr. Rudolph's paper here. In my ad hoc experience, people learn these arguments from Hebrew roots websites and usually do not take time to critically think about their weaknesses. Let's pause again. I'm sorry. I know I'm picking this apart. I would also disagree with this. I think that, Dr. Rudolph is equating one law with Hebrew roots. This, I think, is a mistake. I think it's a misstep. My father is Jewish. His mother was 100% Jewish. Okay. So even to the Jews, my dad is Jewish. Okay. He is a Messianic Jew. He is a Jew that follows the liturgy. He follows a kosher diet. He follows he wraps tefillin every day. He wears a kippah, right? He's a Messianic Jew. And so you can't say that my dad's website, Torah Resource, is a Hebrew Roots website. My dad's website is clearly a Messianic Jewish website. It's always claimed to be that. It always has been that. So anyway, I take umbrage with such a claim that people are getting these from Hebrew Roots websites. Now, let's give Dr. Rudolph some grace here. More and more what I hear is, I saw this on 119 Ministries. And that's fine. I would say that 119 leans Hebrew roots. So, that's, he might be right in that, right? And there have been others. Michael Rood was one of the big ones where people were getting their information. Clearly Hebrew roots. Okay, let's keep going. In this section, I will describe the arguments and then explain some of their shortcomings. Number one, we should live like Yeshua lived. This is such a weird argument to me. Anyway, okay. It's a weird argument from Dr. Rudolph. I don't, as a Jew, Dr. Rudolph's a Jew, and he knows the rabbinical literature. So this is just, I'll describe what I mean in a few seconds. Let's listen to what he has to say. He says, the argument here is that since the Gospels describe Jesus as Torah observant, and since Christians are by definition followers of Jesus, Christians should also be Torah observant. Yes, that is true. But that's not the only reason you would be Torah observant. You should be Torah observant because God says to in the Torah. The main problem with this logic, according to Dr. Rudolph, is that Jesus was Torah observant because he was a Jew and God calls Jews to keep the Torah. That is an incorrect statement. That's an incorrect statement. Show me. Show me where God only calls Jews to keep the Torah. And this is something that I said to Dr. Rudolph. This is eisegesis. This is not exegesis. This is eisegesis. In the Torah, a mixed multitude, that is Jews and Gentiles, come up from Egypt, right? And they are given the Torah. Caleb, son of Jephunneh, is a Gentile. He's a Kenizzite. And yet he is counted among Judah, and he's given the choicest land in Judah. Why? Because it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or not. It matters if you are a covenant member. And so this statement right here, I strongly disagree with. And I don't think the onus is on me to prove it. I think that Dr. Rudolph would need to show us somewhere in the Torah where the Torah itself, where the commands of God are only for the Jew and not for the Gentile. And this is something that the MJAA, the UMJC have not been able to produce. Now, Juster and somebody else, what was his name? I don't know, but actually I think it was another Rudolph, wasn't it? Let's see here. What was it called? Somebody sent it to me. I'm not going to be able to find it now. Anyway, they've gone through every command and they've said this one's for the Jew, this one's not for the Gentile, this one is for the Gentile, so on and so forth. But once again, eisegesis. They are making it up. It's all out of their own head. You cannot find it in the text. In fact, what you do find instead are comments like, there shall be one law for you and the stranger among you. Or, what else? Well, the prophets, right? We see that the Gentiles, and he's going to get to the prophets here in a few seconds, but the prophets explicitly tell us that the Gentiles will be keeping Torah. Right? The coastlands will wait expectantly. Say it with me, everybody. For his Torah, for his law. All right. I'm in a weird mood today. I'm sorry. Okay, let's keep going. If the one law argument were correct, we would have to say that, I can't remember what he says, so this is actually exciting. Because Jesus was circumcised, all Gentile Christians should be circumcised. Yes, we would have to say that, wouldn't we, Dr. Rudolph? That is correct. And yes, that is what we should say. However, the Jerusalem Council decision of Acts 15, oh my gosh. Okay, the Jerusalem Council, we'll talk about this in a second. However, the Jerusalem Council decision of Acts 15, Paul's rule in all the churches in 1 Corinthians, let's see it. Okay. I always forget. Oh, I can't copy it. Okay, hang on just a sec. 1 Corinthians, oh, there we go. Got it. Okay. What does he say? Do you guys want to see it too? Only let each person, well, let's get some Okay, let's go back to, here, you guys want to see it? Give me just a second. There we go. Boom. Okay. We're professionals here. Okay. Oh, yes. Right. I know where we're at. Okay. Let's start in 14. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy or sanctified because of her husband. Otherwise, your children will be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or the sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him and to which God has called him. This is my rule in all the ecclesia. Ecclesiae. Was anyone at the time of his call already circumcised? Let him not seek to remove the marks of circumcision. Is that like epispasm, right? Yeah. Was anyone at the time of his call uncircumcised? Let him not seek circumcision. So once again, Rudolph is taking the position here that circumcision here is physical circumcision. I'm going to have to disagree. I don't see that. If that's the case, we went through Genesis 17 on Monday, and somebody sent me an email. Let's just go there real quick. Do I have yeah, I'm already here. Okay, check this out. I think it was in 10. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. There's this argument that only Jews should be circumcised, or if you're not circumcised on the 8th day, then you can't get circumcised. There's no command for people after the 8th day to get circumcised. I think right here, thank you to my emailer, by the way, for bringing this up, Genesis 17:10. Every male among you shall be circumcised. That doesn't say every male among you shall be circumcised on the 8th day. In fact, he just said that if you buy a slave from a foreigner, in other words, a Gentile slave, that he should be circumcised. So every male among you shall be circumcised. Let's see what's going on in the. I don't understand all the hate with Hebrew roots. That's how I came to the knowledge of Torah keeping in the first place. Yeah, I think that the Hebrew roots has some good things. I think Torah observance is their one thing. However, the Hebrew roots movement grows out of Armstrongism, which denies the Trinity, denies Father, Son, Holy Spirit. They have some very odd, and a lot of them now have denied the deity of Yeshua. And so that's a problem. But beyond that, you have, it grows out of Armstrongism and the sacred name. And so, my mouse is no longer working. And so, because of that, you have sacred nameism, and you have just errant theology that comes in. This is where the hate comes from. Hate. I wouldn't say hate. There are a lot of friends that I have that are Hebrew roots. In fact, there are more friends that I have in my current area that are Hebrew roots than are Messianic. Hebrew roots also usually pushes against scholarship, right? Notoriously, Hebrew roots teachers have called seminaries cemeteries and have said that you should only learn from the Holy Spirit and so on, which has just brought in all sorts of nonsense like fossilized customs and other horrific books. Okay, let's keep going. So I disagree with Dr. Rudolph on the 1 Corinthians reference. Obviously, the Acts 15 reference. I think there's a major problem with such a view. But once again, it comes down to this word circumcision, right? And I think that a lot of the disagreement between me and Rudolph here is going to come from this word circumcision. I take it to mean something completely different than he does. He takes it to mean the physical act of circumcision, which I think he's going to have problems with in multiple places, like Galatians 5:11. Now that I've referenced it, let's go to it real quick. Hang on, let me kick back over here. Again, we'll just look at it real quick. I'm not going to do an exposition on this, but maybe I should at some point. Let's come back to, where was I? 1 Corinthians. Okay. So Galatians 5:11. Here we are right here. But if I, brothers, still preach circumcision, why am I still being persecuted? In that case, the offense of the cross has been removed. Tell me how the offense of the cross is there if he preached circumcision. And what does it mean that if he still preached circumcision? Heating up here. All right. Let's go back. Let's go back to this. We haven't gotten very far, have we? Okay. And Paul's letter to the Galatians, Galatians 5:2. Actually, he's in the same place. That's interesting. Okay. Hang on. Just trying to produce this show while I talk. 5:2. Let's see here. Look, I, Paul, say to you that if you accept circumcision, Messiah will be of no advantage to you. Yeah, my father did so much work on this, and once again, this comes down to what does circumcision mean? I think he's talking about the proselyte conversion process. In other words, the man-made ritual process of becoming a proselyte. In the first century, this is something, so my dad talked on this in his Galatians audio. So if you listen to I think he's got 58 lectures or 52 lectures, something like that on Galatians. It can be found on our website, TorahResource.com. Anyway, he talks about this a lot. Look, in the first century, if you were a Gentile, you were considered unclean to the Jews, right? What happens? Jubilees says, the book of Jubilees, which is a first century book, says, and I'm not saying that it's canon, but certainly they were reading it, right? So Jubilees says that if you're a Jew, you're not allowed to eat with a Gentile. We see the same thing in Galatians 2, right? Peter doesn't want the Jews to see him eating with Gentiles. And Paul excoriates him for it. So if you convert and you become a proselyte, you're no longer allowed to eat with your family? What does Paul say? Paul says, no. Conversion, becoming a proselyte doesn't make you a covenant member. Faith makes you a covenant member. Allegiance to Yeshua makes you a covenant member. Therefore, if you haven't gone through proselyte conversion, then stay how you are, right? Okay. Admittedly, so this is a great question, or Jacob Murray says this. He says, admittedly, the view that circumcision is oral Torah can be hard to defend, since the oral Torah was written centuries later. The argument seems to rely on inerrancy and a single narrative, which is true. Yeah, I agree with you. I've never said that circumcision is oral Torah. I don't believe that. I don't take that view. So yeah, I mean, you would have to define what you mean by oral Torah. I agree that there's no. I agree that it's not oral Torah, but certainly it's a man-made ritual of conversion, in my opinion. It's a proselyte conversion process, and we see this in places like Josephus. We see it in other places as well, and we see it in the Apostolic Scriptures. So I'm not sure what you would mean by oral Torah. Okay, let's keep going. Let's kick back over here. Let's hear what Dr. Rudolph has to say. Okay. In other words, the one law argument is not consistent with the New Testament teaching. I believe it's completely consistent. In fact, I think it's more consistent than Dr. Rudolph's. Dr. Rudolph wants to say that one new man means that there are clearly two separate people, even though the text specifically says there's one new man. But what about Jesus teaching that whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same? This is super interesting, by the way. I remember this, and this is actually what my grandmother argued to my father back 35 years ago. But what about Jesus teaching that whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven? But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:19, and he's using the NRSV. Doesn't this mean that all Christians should keep God's commands, including kosher laws, etc.? Once again, context is key. Jesus spoke these words to his disciples, all of whom were Jews. Gentiles are not in view in this passage. Gentile Christians should walk like Jesus walked when it comes to Torah ethics, carrying the cross and being led by the Spirit. However, there is no indication in the scripture that Gentile followers of Jesus are supposed to keep distinctly Jewish customs because Jesus did. There is no such thing as a distinctly Jewish custom. Once again, this needs to be hit home every time that Rudolph tries to say it. It's almost like, I know that Dr. Rudolph is not trying to do this, but it's almost like propaganda, right? He's going to say it so many times that it just starts to become like, oh, okay, like you're just going to accept it. No, I'm not going to accept it. There's no such thing as a distinctly Jewish custom. There's not. Not in the Torah, at least. Second of all, are you telling me that the entire Sermon on the Mount is not for Gentiles? Hey, we should get a hold of every single church out there now and tell them, stop preaching from the Sermon on the Mount. Those 2 chapters in Matthew are not for you. Those are for Jews only. Blessed are the poor in spirit. No, that's for the Jews, not for the Gentiles, right? So the idea that the entire Sermon on the Mount is spoken to Jews and therefore, like, now what are we going to, okay, let's think through this for just a second. Anytime that Yeshua is teaching to Jews, it means that it's not for Gentiles? Is that what we're going to do now? We're going to go through the Gospels and we're going to start nitpicking and we're going to say, oh, well, you know, Yeshua specifically says to the Gentile woman, I didn't come. I came only for the lost sheep of Israel. So he's always talking to Jews. So I want to make sure I get Dr. Rudolph's point here. All of Yeshua's teaching that we find in the apostolic scriptures is only for Jews, not for Gentiles. So if Yeshua is talking to a Jew, it's not for Gentiles. Therefore, the church should not listen to it. According to this view, essentially what we'd have to do is cut out most of the Bible that's not Paul, right? So you're going to get rid of the Tanakh, the Old Testament. You're going to get rid of the Gospels, right? Because Yeshua is talking to Jews and to Israel. And then what are you going to do? You're going to throw out First and Second Peter, right? Because he's talking to Jews. What about John? Well, is John talking to Jews or Gentiles in Revelation? I don't know. Let's keep John in there. So we got Paul. Hebrews has to be thrown out because that's clearly to the Jews and not to the Gentiles. So now we got Paul's letters, and then we have Revelation. Is there anything that I missed? Oh, Jacob says, I meant viewing the word circumcision in Acts 15 as proselytizing as a tradition. No, I don't think that that's a stretch at all. In fact, I don't think that that's, not only is it not a stretch, but it fits the context, especially with verse 21. Because he says, I mean, okay, let's go to 15 real quick. Hang on, let me produce the show. How about the whole new covenant? That's right. Thank you, Micah. The entire the new covenant is not for the church because it's for Judah and Israel, and Judah drops out, and then we have Israel only, right? So it's only for Israel. Okay. Acts 15. But some men came down from Judea and were teaching the breath. Well, first of all, hang on, Jacob. One of the things that we have to do is we have to take all of the scriptures in accord. I would like how are you going to take Galatians 5:11? How are you going to take why does Paul hit home circumcision that Abraham had faith before circumcision so hard in Romans 4? Like when we take it all together, so I think it's clear. Now obviously it's not because so many people don't believe this, but I think that there's a good argument to be made, which has been made, that Paul is using circumcision as a shorthand for proselyte conversion. But some men came down. I'm in 15:1, Acts 15:1. Some men came down from Judea and were teaching the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses. I did a lot of work on this term, custom of Moses, in my Acts commentary. Hang on. Available at TorahResource.com. Oh, man. Go get your copy now. Custom of Moses is not found anywhere else in the scriptures. However, we do have some parallels, and I think that this is a meaning that is not the Torah. Custom of Moses I think means oral tradition or man-made tradition. So I think that actually is the crux right there for Jacob in the chat room. I think that that's the crux. He says, according to the custom of Moses. Custom of Moses is not you don't have a custom of Moses for circumcision, unless maybe. So Van Hoff takes this. Let's give fair due. Custom of Moses, and some people, other people, I think that Frostad might take this view. That custom of Moses here means 8th day. So some men were coming down from Judea. Let's read it according to that view, okay? Just bear with me here. But some men were coming down from Judea and were teaching, brothers, unless you are circumcised on the 8th day, you cannot be saved. That's how they're taking it, okay? And they're taking this from Jubilees and other places. The article, Circumcision in the First Century on Torah Resource by Rob Van Hoff. You can go read it there. I don't take it that way. I think that this means custom is, I think it's used, I think if I remember correctly, it's used 12 times in the Apostolic Scriptures. And I think all but 2 are clearly man-made tradition. There might be 2 that are Torah commands, might be, but even that is in question. And I write about this in my commentary. So, custom of Moses I take as what Jacob said, oral tradition. Circumcision according to oral tradition. You cannot be saved. And then they go into it. So, yeah, I think that not only is it easy to uphold the idea that circumcision means man-made ritual here, I think it's actually in the text. Okay, the chat room is on fire. Good job, guys. How about the whole new covenant? Yes. How does he interpret Matthew 28, 19 and 20? Yeah, exactly. And okay, great. This is a great point. Thank you. Thank you, Gary. In the chat room, Gary for the win here. Let's kick back here. So, and this is the point that I was going to make, right? When we look at like Judaism, what a disciple was. In fact, there's all these stories in the Mishnah and the Talmud, right? And I'm not saying that we need to take Mishnah and Talmud and read them back into the first century, but by the time you get to the Mishnah and the Talmud, okay, so we're talking sometime like 200 to 400 AD, right? You have these stories about these disciples who are wanting to see their actually maybe later, because I think we're in the Talmud at this point, right? So in the Talmud, you have these stories, so maybe 500. You have these stories of these disciples, right, of different rabbis. And they one of them goes into, one of them sits and sees how his rabbi eats, and he wants to eat exactly the same way. And then another disciple goes even further. What does he do? He goes in and he walks into the latrine to see which direction his rabbi sits when he's when he's going to the restroom, okay? Why? Because he wants to sit exactly as his master does. And then the story goes even further. There is a disciple who goes and hides under his rabbi's bed. And his rabbi comes in with his wife and begins to do things that a husband and wife do. And all of a sudden, the rabbi realizes that his disciple is under his bed, and he says, "Hey, what are you doing? You can't do this." And he said, "I wanted to see how you did this because I want to do it just like you." And he said, "This is not right. You can't be, there's a whole story about this." Okay? And why am I bringing this up? Because this is the role, by the time we get to the Talmud, the role of the disciple is this: you emulate your master. You emulate your master as much as you possibly can. Why? Because he's your master. You do things exactly like he does. He's the one who walks out Torah so that you can see how it is. And so in Matthew 20, what is it? Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations. So yeah, the Gentiles are going to come and they're going to see their master and they're going to want to do things exactly like him. Now, there are some, like Michael Jones, Inspiring Philosophy, who say things like, "Oh, are you going to wear a toga? Because in the first century they wore a toga." No, there's nowhere in the Torah that tells us to wear a toga. But if I could see what color clothes Yeshua wore, I might wear them. Right? There are disciples of various rabbis today that still look like they're from the Middle Ages. Why? Because they want to dress exactly like their rabbi did. So yeah, the point, this is, I mean, I'm sorry, it just doesn't hit well for me. It just doesn't hit well. This argument just does not make any sense. You have to take the presupposition that there are laws that are specific to Jews and Gentiles. This is not in the text. It is a presupposition. All these guys, Juster, Rudolph, Kinzer, all these UMJC and MJAA guys, they come to the text with a presupposition, and their presupposition, it's eisegesis. They have made it up and they have put it into the text. What is it? It's that there are laws for Jews, and that there are Jew-specific laws, right? That is a presupposition. It is not in the text. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go down to number 2. Here we are. Can you see this? Yes, you can. Okay. We should be celebrating God's feast today since the nations will be observing them in the future. This, too, is just such an odd argument from Rudolph. By the way, Rudolph is a highly intelligent person. I'm not trying to say that he's not smart or that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And yes, of course, Micah in the chat room, 2820, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. From Yeshua to the Gentiles, right? Okay. Rudolph is highly intelligent. He's way smarter than I am, by the way. He's got a doctorate. He's done a lot of work, right? But on this, he falls short, in my opinion. Number 2, we should celebrate God's feast today since the nations will be observing them in the future. And this is how the argument goes. The argument here is that Zechariah 14, 16 through 19. By the way, I use this argument all the time. I think it's a strong argument. The argument here is that Zechariah 14, 16 through 19 indicates, by the way, that's not the only prophet that indicates this, that everyone in the age to come will observe Israel's festivals, and thus the biblical ideal is for all Gentile believers to observe them today. That makes sense, right? We're not dispensationalists. There are several problems with this argument. So says Rudolph. Number 1, it overstates what the scriptures actually say. Zechariah 14, 16 through 19 may refer to representatives of the nations going up to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot. Let's pause here for just a second. What? So you're telling me that the nations shouldn't keep the festivals, but that they need to have representatives come up to represent them as celebrating the festival of Sukkot? So which one is it? Are they not supposed to celebrate it because they're Gentiles and this is a Jewish specific festival? Or do the nations need to have representatives to celebrate Sukkot because they're not supposed to celebrate it? What? This literally is a contradiction in his viewpoint. Either the nations are not supposed to keep them because they're Jew specific, they're bloodline specific commands, or they're supposed to keep them, and therefore representatives are going to go up. Which one is it? Am I the only one who sees this? Am I the only one who sees that this is a complete contradiction in what he's in what he's saying? Chat room, tell me, am I off on this? Okay, let's read it again so that we can get his whole statement here. Zechariah 14, 16 through 19 may refer to representatives of the nations going up to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot, and not everyone in the world, which does not seem possible. So you're telling me that because of logistics now, you're not seeing that I just don't understand the argument. And honestly, I don't think that this is very well thought out. Other annual festivals are not mentioned. Okay, other annual festivals are not mentioned, except for that Paul tells the Corinthians, Gentiles, to celebrate the feast, right? And Yeshua tells his disciples that he will eat of the of it in of the Passover in the kingdom with them, right? What else do we see? We see in Isaiah that all the nations will come up, right? The Jews the Gentiles in Ezekiel get land rights to the land of Israel, and some Gentiles become priests in Isaiah. Man, I can't keep up with the chat room right now. Show me your faith without works, and I'll show you my faith by works. You believe in God, but even the demons believe. Faith without works is dead. This is because it is just belief. You have to learn the difference between belief and faith. He saved us not by the righteous deeds we had done, but according to the mercy through the washing of new birth and renewal by the Holy Spirit. Amen. He has saved us and called us. Okay, 2 Timothy 1:9. Yes, our works don't save us. No one ever said that works save us. I'm not sure. So this is not this. It looks like the chat room. Some in the chat. Maybe I'm wrong. It looks like there might be a faith versus works argument going on. Once again, I don't believe that circumcision justifies a person. Faith justifies a person. Now we're talking about sanctification. We're talking about the birthright that the covenant members get. Once I enter the covenant, I'm in. Look, I'm a Calvinist. I believe that once saved, always saved. Once you become a covenant member, you're a covenant member. New covenant, right? Once you become a new covenant member, you're a new covenant member. So now I get a birthright and I get to keep the Torah. Well, isn't that kind of built in if you are too far from the place and God has placed his name then there instead of coming you buy the food and eat where you are? Yeah, and actually, E.P. Sanders did a lot of work on this in his book, Judaisms. I think there's a subtitle there, but Judaisms. And he talks about how outside of the land of Israel, no one went up to, like, if you were outside of the land, that you didn't pilgrimage every year, right? And this is how we get Paul not going up to the temple every single year. Right, he's gone for years at a time. He's out in Corinth. He's in Corinth for a year and a half. He didn't go to the pilgrimage festivals. Yeshua was in Egypt, right, and didn't go up for the pilgrimage festivals. So yes, agreed. Okay, where am I at? Okay, let's keep going here. So we're at number 2, right? Yeah, right there. Okay, even if God calls the nations to observe Sukkot, which he does, and other aspects of Israel's calendar in the future, why would that mean Gentile believers should celebrate, and here, look at this, he does it again, Jewish festivals today? First of all, they're not Jewish festivals. They're God's festivals. They're festivals in the Tanakh. They're festivals for covenant members. There's no such thing as a Jewish festival. Except for maybe, we could say Hanukkah is a Jewish festival. I'll give you that. Purim, Jewish festival. But the major holidays in the Torah, not Jewish festivals. Now, does that mean that Hanukkah and Purim should not be celebrated by Gentiles? No, absolutely not. I think that they should be celebrated if people want to celebrate them. Absolutely. But it's not like, we can't say that Yom Kippur is a Jewish festival. It doesn't call it that. Okay, onward with Dr. Rudolph's exposition here. Are we supposed to do everything now that will be done in the eschaton? Where do we see this principle in the Bible? This is such an odd argument, too. Do you celebrate Sukkot? Does Dr. Rudolph celebrate Sukkot? The answer is absolutely. Does Dr. Rudolph celebrate Passover? The answer is absolutely. So if you as a disciple celebrate it, why wouldn't you expect other disciples to do it? If you're a covenant member and you're doing it now, why would you expect other covenant members not to? That doesn't make any sense. Consider Yeshua's teaching, for in the resurrection neither men nor women will marry, rather they will be like angels in heaven. What? Okay. Should God's people therefore not marry in the present age? Behind this one law argument is an over-realized eschatology. And the consensus of New Testament scholarship is that Paul did not instruct Gentile believers to keep Israel's festivals. Yeah, this is a really bad argument as well. Why? Well, for a very long time, the majority of New Testament scholars were Catholic. Up until the Reformation. So from 200, well, let's say that Roman Catholicism starts in 500. So from 500 to 1500, for 1,000 years, the majority of Christian scholars said a lot of things that we don't believe. We don't believe in indulgences. We don't believe in transubstantiation. We don't believe, come on, right? Now, if you're Catholic, you do. But the point here is simply that just because the majority of Christian scholars have been wrong on a lot of things. This is why we continue. Sorry, my brain's going a million miles a second here. If the majority of biblical scholars were right on everything, we wouldn't have biblical scholarship. Everything would be settled. The reason that Dr. Rudolph and I go to the Society of Biblical Literature is because it's a continuing, a field that continues to expand. Because people push on the ideas of the majority of scholars. Okay. See Paul's pastoral guidance in Romans 14:5-6. Oy vey. I got to do a whole show on. Maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll take a break from reading through a paper, and we'll do a whole exposition on Romans 14. He gives Gentile believers, his primary audience in this letter, a wide latitude of freedom with respect to the Jewish calendar. Oh my gosh. Okay. To be honest with you, I will be honest with you. I don't think that I did not expect Dr. Rudolph to take such a view of Romans 14. Should not mean he's wrong, of course. Could the scholars be wrong on the Trinity? Well, the scholars could be wrong on the Trinity, but the Bible's not. So, no, the Bible's not wrong on the Trinity. Okay, let's keep going. We got a little bit of time here. Don't you want to be blessed? The argument here is that God gave the Torah to his people so that they would be blessed. Deuteronomy 28:1-14. Therefore, so now, I mean, I can only assume here that a standard Jewish argument is going to come, right? You're not Jewish, therefore Deuteronomy 28:1-14 doesn't apply to you, right? Therefore, anyone who wants to be blessed should keep the Torah. Yeah, I think that keeping the Torah is a blessing. The problem with this logic is that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people. His view hinges on this. And once again, eisegesis. This is eisegesis. He did not give it to the Jewish people. He gave it to a mixed multitude. He did not give the Torah to the Jewish people. He gave the Torah. Now, let's be fair here to Dr. Rudolph. In Dr. Rudolph's defense, the Torah was given to the Jews so that they could maintain it. In other words, it is the responsibility of the Jewish people, of the 12 tribes of Israel, to maintain the covenants. 100% agree with Dr. Rudolph on this. However, the idea that the Torah is given to a bloodline-specific people to keep is simply not... We don't even see this in the Apostolic Scriptures. How often do we see that Paul goes into a synagogue and there's Jews and Greeks there? We have an Ethiopian eunuch at the temple. We have, there's Gentiles who are keeping the Torah. So... Anyway, the problem with this logic is that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people, and his promises of blessing and cursing in Deuteronomy 28-30 relate specifically to Israel's covenant relationship with God. However, so the point here is simply that the covenant blessings and curses apply to covenant members. Anyone can be a covenant member. One new man. Right? Heirs according to promise. That means that the Gentiles become the descendants of Abraham. While some Gentile believers will experience God's blessing when they live out the aspects of Jewish life, once again, see, he wants to interchange Jewish life. He wants to interchange Jewish with Torah, with like God's culture. Chat room. Was Caleb who came back with Joshua with a good report from Canaan a Jew? Good question. Okay. There's the aspects of Jewish life. He wants to make the Torah Jewish, and so he keeps using this term Jewish life and no. Jewish laws. No. It's covenant. A covenant life. This is a matter of personal calling, and they should not think that everyone else in the world is called to have the same experience. I just don't understand. I don't understand the motivation here. Why do the leaders of these groups put so much emphasis on their bloodline? Why would you find your identity in your bloodline? Why wouldn't you find your identity in being a covenant member? Why wouldn't you find your identity in Yeshua? I'm not saying that Dr. Rudolph doesn't, but look, he is so ethnic specific. His identity is wrapped up in him being a Jew, and oh, if you're not Jewish, don't infringe, don't appropriate my culture. It's not, it's God's culture. This is the beauty of the Torah, is that it doesn't matter what culture you're from. If you're Mexican, if you're Italian, it doesn't matter. When you take on the Torah, your culture conforms to God's commands. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Paul says, continuing on, Paul says in 1 Timothy 1:8, we know that the Torah is good, provided one uses it in the way the Torah itself intends. CJB version. The real question is whether God intends for all Gentile believers to be circumcised, to keep kosher, to observe the Sabbath on the seventh day, to celebrate all of Israel's festivals, etc. And the answer is yes. The Torah simply does not say this. Yes, it does. It absolutely does say that. It says that specifically. We only experience God's blessings when we are in alignment with his will. When we step outside of his order and the leading of the Spirit, we step outside of the realm of God's blessing. Consider as well that every culture in the world has elements within it that are gifts from God. Faced with these millions of blessings from God, the key question is not, do you want to be blessed? But where is the Lord leading you to experience the blessings that God has uniquely prepared for you? Once again, the more I read and the more we dive into this, the more I realize like there is just a fundamental difference in the way that we're viewing this. It's like I feel a little bit like, he's holding on to the Torah and he's like, this is mine. You don't get it. Don't you dare try to keep God's commands. It's my God, not your God. That's a little bit what it feels like. Like you get a piece of God over there, go over there, go play in your area. But we're going to stay over here. The big boys are going to stay over here. Right. And the funny thing is that he's already referenced the IAMCS steering committee paper, which once again, and I thought about this morning. I was like, maybe I should read that section. What nobody wants to say is that the IAMCS literally accused my father of preaching salvation by works. They said he was preaching a false gospel. I think that Dr. Rudolph knows that's not true. I think a lot of people know that that's not true. We've gotten emails from people in the MJAA saying that they couldn't believe that the IAMCS wrote that. These guys continue to refer to that paper. What they did was they tried to blacklist my dad. They tried to blacklist my dad. You know what? The same thing just happened with David Wilbur. R.L. Solberg and Andrew Schumacher. Those guys, they tried to blacklist Wilbur by saying he was preaching a false gospel. Schumacher would pull back from that and say, no, you need to watch the video. R.L. Solberg said that anyone who believed that there was another temple that was going to be built was preaching a false gospel. Schumacher got into the comments and said, amen, brother. I can't wait for our conversation. This is what happens. People don't like the argument that's being brought, and so instead of trying to actually talk biblically about things, instead of doing that, what they do is they try to blacklist people. And unfortunately, the IAMCS has done that with my dad. First, they said he wasn't Jewish. Then they said he was preaching a false gospel, and they bury it in a 60-page document. I'm venting right now, obviously, but at the same time, instead of people trying to have discussions and whatnot, they go to attacking. And I'm not saying that Rudolph is doing this. In fact, I think that Rudolph has been very gracious, especially to me. But the fact is that whether, I know that Rudolph has read that steering committee paper. And no one from the MJAA is standing up to the IAMCS and being like, dude, you guys have a paper on your website that accuses a Messianic Jewish leader and teacher who has taught in the Messianic Jewish movement for 40 years and saying that he's teaching a false gospel? How are the leaders in the MJAA not calling, Stepikoff and all these guys to the carpet on this? Here we are. When did they do that? 2015, 11 years later. And these guys still have something like that up on their website. It's disgraceful. All right. I'm done. Anyway, next week we will continue on. We're only on page 13. We're not going to go through this whole thing. I think we're probably going to get through to the end. Maybe what we'll do is when we don't have content, we'll come back to it. I'm going to write it down. Page 13. There it is. So we'll come back to page 13. We are one family. Oh, this is an argument. I've used. We'll get to this next week. And then also we need to talk about some other things. Maybe at some point we'll stop and do Romans 14. Yeah. All right. Let me wait for just a second while my keyboard turns back on. There we go. Okay. I'm going to kick back here and I'm going to give you ways to get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me, chegg@torahresource.com, chegg@torahresource.com. You can also call the comment line, 253-465-3205. It's 253-465-3205. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I really do appreciate any likes that you give and any subscriptions that you give. This is going to take you a year. Exactly. And that's okay. Hey, look, people are listening, right? I know for a fact that we got people in the MJAA that are listening. I know for a fact that we got people who are sanctioned by the MJAA or by the IAMCS listening to this show right now. So I don't know what we're doing different, but something's working. Anyway, we'll be back next week to talk about it. And if you got comments, questions, please send them in to my email address. All right. It's been a whirlwind, but I'm having fun. I hope that this conversation has done at least one thing. That is to glorify our great God and Savior, Yeshua the Messiah. Why? I think you know why. Because Messiah matters.